Location, location, location. We often heard people talking about the three most important things when it comes to buying a property. But from a property manager's perspective, who's been in the UAE market for the past 10 years, I can tell you there are more than that. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the three common oversights that property investors make when they're buying a property in the UAE, and it will quietly erode your profit in the long term. So make sure you don't make the same mistake. UAE property market has been on the rise since 2020, especially in Dubai, and Abu Dhabi is catching up since 2022. A lot of investors, they like buying in the UAE because there's no income tax, living standard is high, and then you get a 10-year golden visa. Sounds like a great deal. And there are many good properties to purchase in the UAE. However, from a property manager's perspective, we're stuck with the properties for a long term, and then we see how properties perform in different cycles. And these are the three advice that we can offer to property owners, whoever are thinking about buying property. Don't make these three mistakes. Usually when it comes to a sales transaction, real estate broker, their job is done once the SPA is signed. However, from a property manager's perspective, we're often stuck with a property for many years, accompanying the client through different market cycles. And here are the three mistakes that we often see people make. So if you can avoid them, I'm sure it will add value to your next purchase. Number one, I love your unit, but I hate your building. Unfortunately, I learned this lesson the hard way. I have a unit on Reem Island, great view, mangrove view, amazing. However, the building management really is not great. So right after they finished construction of our unit, they went into liquidation problems, so all sorts of issues, not going into the detail, which means that they often compromise on the quality of the facility management, or they are just short of collecting service charge. Hence, the building was just not managed in a great shape. When you enter the building, you feel the lobby is dark, the hallway is dark, you really don't have the nice vibe. And throughout all these years of owning this property, I often hear people tell me like, I really like your unit, great view. However, I love your unit, but I hate your building. And that is the saddest part as a property owner, because you spend so much money in purchasing a property and then you want it to rise in value. However, if you don't pay attention to how the developers will manage your building, this is what will happen to you too. And we have seen some of the properties we manage to struggle to get rented out quickly. And there's very little we can do about it. We can improve the overall condition and then the feel of the unit inside, but when it comes to the building management, the facility management, this is out of each individual owner's control. So when you are buying a property, make sure you find a credible developer who have good track records in terms of how they manage their previous projects to get a good sense of how your property will be treated. And I can give you an example. The building next to mine have already doubled the value in the past 3 years. However, mine has only risen by 33%, despite the market is going very strong. And we have seen this happen to some of our property clients who bought a property and it has great view, where the building management is really not doing a great job. And there's very little that our client can do about it. Prime location doesn't mean it's always the best place to invest. And we see that a lot, especially in Dubai. Where are the prime locations? Business Bay, downtown, Palm Jumeirah. However, those areas, because it's prime, the price has also risen quite a lot in value. And sometimes I do wonder, like, how much rent can we practically command? Like, I have someone spoke to me after they had bought a property that they bought a studio in Business Bay for 2 million dirham. Like, how much rent should you be getting in order to justify that investment? So I know, especially from an overseas owner's perspective, prime location always seems to be the safest place. However, we have to bear in mind that prime locations prices have already gone up a lot in value. You have to look into the supply. Are there a lot of supplies in prime locations as well? Because if there is, then you can expect the rent to be saturated. However, if you have already paid a high premium, then it might not be the best investment choice that you can make. And you might well better off investing in some other areas where the supply is more limited and you know what kind of a prospective tenants will want to live in that property. And if that's the case, sometimes you might be better off investing in not the prime area, but area where there is solid demand from tenants and there are decent developers developing, better with some infrastructure going through that area. You might find yourself generating more solid return than just investing in prime location where the price is charged at a premium with a lot of supply coming up. Number 3, service charge. Investing property in the UAE is quite different from a lot of different places, because even after developers sell you the property, developers still remain in control of who they want to manage the community or the building. And then they still have an influence in terms of how much service charge they will be charging. So even if they have sold you a property, it doesn't mean the developer is going away. And we have seen the service charge estimation seem to be increasing in the UAE market. For example, Dubai, it seems quite common these days to have service charge at 20 to 25 dirham per square foot. And in Abu Dhabi, the service charge estimation has also gone up for off-plan project. We can see them going from 25 to even 31 dirham per square foot. However, if you're looking at the ready-built units in the neighborhood, a lot of them, their service charge is only about 11 to 13 dirham per square foot. To me, as a property manager, sometimes it puzzles me because I don't really know what kind of services the developers will be delivering in the future to justify that amount of service charge they will be collecting, and I don't know whether the tenant will be ready to pay such a high premium to live in such a building. Perhaps they will, because we don't know. The properties are not yet being delivered. But from a property manager's perspective, be mindful about the service charge and be realistic about the rental return that you will be getting from those projects. But from the property manager's perspective, just be mindful about the service charge the developers will be charging, and just be realistic about how much rental yield that you can get from those buildings without rushing into a property purchase decision without looking into those details. So these are the 3 oversights I often see people make when they're buying a property in the UAE. Make sure you don't make the same mistakes, and if you want to reach out to us, check out the description. Bye!